Okay. Thank you so much for being here. As Doris introduced me, my name is Patricia, and both the moderator and I'll probably give my 2 cents as well, my reflections of the film. But before I share my reflections, I'll quickly introduce you to the audience. Director Thomas Blom graduated cum laude from the St. Joost, I think. Forgive me first, I just had to apologize. There are a lot of Dutch. Yeah, I think so. It's okay, I'll go through it quickly. He graduated cum laude from the St. Joost Academy for Audiovisual Arts. As a freelance director, he made a Moscow Stadium disaster for ESPN Europe, which exposed the greatest football disaster in history, and two documentaries for the deported, series about returning asylum children, which was awarded the Clara Major.
I can give a short summary.
Okay.
I do this a long time,
Okay.
and I made a lot of documentaries all over the place, and also one which led to this series, which is called The Hunt for Gaddafi Billions. It was also on ARTE. And another one, perhaps people in the audience have seen it. It's about Saudi Arabia. It was on ZDF Info. So all over the place. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll leave it there. Then I will just share my reflections.
Please.
So I also decided to sort of put down my notes because I had the privilege of watching the film before you guys. So I just decided to put down the notes so that I'm not all over the place. Firstly, I'd like to express my gratitude to Thomas and his co-producer, Misha Vessel and Koliswa Stole, for their remarkable film. Before inviting Thomas to discuss the film, I would like to offer my reflections as a non-specialist in apartheid. I speak as a citizen of South Africa based on what I've heard and read. The film raises several critical issues. However, before I raise some of those issues, let me start by characterizing my understanding of apartheid. I think it is important that we are cognizant of the fact that apartheid was not merely an event that started in 1946 and ended in 1994. But for me, I see it as a colonial system that is embedded in structures, institutions, and people's psyche, in which power, economy, subjectivity, space, education, language, and marriages, just to mention a few, were organized in a manner where race served as a fundamental organizing principle. It is not an event, as its effects have persisted beyond its legal abolition. Consequently, I question whether apartheid left anything untouched in South Africa. By this, I'm highlighting the enormity of apartheid. So one of the themes that emerged in my mind as I was watching the film is the notion of continuity and discontinuity theme between apartheid and the so-called post-apartheid or democratic South Africa. For instance, violence continues. Example is the Sharpeville massacre depicted in the film, and the Marikana massacre, for those of you that happened in 2012 in the Northwest Province, where black miners were killed during a peaceful protest in ways similar to the 1960 Sharpeville protest against pass law. But the Marikana massacre was about demanding improved working conditions and wage increases. Although these massacres occurred in different years, they illustrate continued violence against black bodies. Another observation speaks to the notion of free at last, which is the title of the film in English. It is provocative as it prompts me to ponder on the big question of freedom and its meaning in South Africa. I don't think Thomas and his co-producers mean that South Africa is free per se. I think they are provoking us to think about freedom and its meanings. I'm saying this because people still people in South Africa are still fighting for freedom, and this is based on my experiences. Freedom from poverty, violence, crime, femicides, access to strategic resources like land. If there's any freedom I saw in the film, is the freedom to express frustrations. In addition, I've also made an observation of how the Black survivors of Sharpeville massacre and other members who lost their family members during apartheid are still on a quest for closure. I guess it explains why the untold stories of apartheid. But how does one reach closure if there's still many bodies unaccounted for, and them being denied to view the bodies of their loved ones as seen in the film? What also stands out for me in the film is the challenge how to make a transition from a traumatic experience to the so-called freedom at last. At the center of this is the question of justice. And here I'm reminded of Mamdani, who argues that the South African transition shifted from the Nuremberg template of justice, where the perpetrators are identified and pushed to the political justice, punished, to political justice, where the perpetrators and the victims are given space or platform to speak, listen and forgive each other, so as to relive together in a new society as citizens of New South Africa / Rainbow Nation. However, it's important to note that the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, it's contested in the context of South Africa, the question whether it worked or not, particularly because the perpetrators, as we've also seen on the film, refused to avail themselves to before the TRC. This gesture was not necessarily, the gesture of forgiveness was not necessarily widely embraced. Perhaps my last reflection is that we see ANC, the African National Government, paralyzed in the face of these challenges, where the ANC, the African National Congress, is fighting for its political survival. Stalwarts of anti-apartheid struggle are blaming one another, while the majority of the population wallows in poverty as victims of crime and violence. How can such a ruling party carry the burden of delivering substantive freedom? This begs to us to pose the question, what freedom at last do we mean? Thank you. I will now hand over to Thomas.
Yeah. You want me to react on that?
It's up to you, really. Yeah, these are just some of the things I was thinking about as I was watching.
Yeah, let's do it step by step, as far as I can process this. I totally agree with you. I mean, that's why we started out with about that apartheid is not like a period, but it was always there. So that's why we start out with that piece of archive saying that the blacks were always suppressed in South Africa. So, but why we wanted to make this series, it has several reasons, and it touches all your reflections. So I'm really happy about that. First of all, we wanted to show that apartheid is a system, and that it makes people perpetrators and victims, but it's really a system with laws and stuff like that. The second thing is your reflection about Free at Last. It's absolutely right. We discussed for hours also with Xoliswa and with Misha and with SABC about should we do a question mark behind it. But we had the feeling it's a little bit more provocative like this, and so we left it, but you picked it up brilliantly. And I think at the last part you talk about the ANC at this moment, right? Yeah. For the people here, I really hope that you watch the 3 episodes, because it is exactly what you are saying now, and that will be shown in the next episodes. Because after the apartheid era, the ANC had a big task to deliver a kind of justice and a kind of closure. And at this moment in South Africa, there's turmoil because there was no closure and because the ANC left. To say it bluntly, I come from Amsterdam. They didn't deliver that well. So, for the audience, bear in mind that we made this series for South Africa itself. So it was shown at the Channel 1 in South Africa, the 3-part series. And South Africa, I mean Germany and Europe, that's all tricky. But South Africa is something else. Political, very tricky, right? There are a lot of feelings. So it was the tension for us to make it, for Xoliswa especially, and also for the producers in South Africa. They were very anxious to put something like this on the South African television, because this is the first time, if I may say so, that people, and it's hard to believe, talk openly about these kind of experiences. So that shows that this trauma is really buried. I think I'm right to say that, right, Patricia? And for us to make this series as well, and I got the idea when I was a lot in South Africa for another film about the Gaddafi money, and then I saw the Timor case, and then I asked the researcher, okay, but why isn't he in jail, this guy? And then people explained to me that the TRC, there was one big condition within the TRC, that if the TRC said no, this kind of violence was not cannot be justified as a political violence, then those people should be prosecuted. And they made a list of 300 people to be the cases, and the perpetrators should be prosecuted. From those 300 people on that list, which was a very hard condition for the TRC, also for Yasmin Soka, for others to join the TRC, from those cases and those perpetrators, none has been convicted. So the main condition of the TRC is not met. So why we wanted to make this series is also to show in the Western view, in the Western frame, like, oh, the TRC, that's brilliant, and we have to do it like that. But there is much more behind it. First of all, the condition was not met. And secondly, we show in the third part that people also, members of the TRC, like Yasmin Soka, wanted the Nuremberg trial. They wanted it. But, to keep the country peaceful, or there was too many forces, they chose to do the TRC. But at this moment, those conditions within the TRC are not met, and that's one of the reasons there is so much, people are not happy in South Africa. For this, and then I'll let you talk, please. For this one, for the first, this was also shown, of course, in South Africa, and I'm very glad and proud to say that Bill and Nancy and Madeleine Foulard are now working together. So the process has started to find those missing bodies, and if you have seen episode 2 and 3, at this moment, for example, Ramaphosa has conducted an inquiry to the lack of justice, and they want to look if the ANC deliberately didn't want to prosecute the perpetrators in those 300 cases. And the one name which pops up all the time is Mbeki, and Mbeki has to, he will be questioned in that inquiry. So that's my reaction or your reflection. Okay.
Thank you so much. The one thing also that comes into mind is it would have been nice if Xolisa was here as well, right?
Absolutely,
as a female black director who worked with you, just to also give her own view about, the...
we first of all, Misha and I only wanted to make this film in a total collaboration with South Africa. We've seen so many films from Western filmmakers. You know, they fly in, they give their view on apartheid or whatever. I don't like it. So we said, because we were in talks actually with London production houses, and they didn't want that. And we said, no, we want it. So I'm very glad for ARTE and ZDF, they stepped in this project, because that's we could deliver the total cooperation on South Africa. I mean, this is totally unique. I've never seen that. So South Africa, Western production companies, Western broadcasters, and Xoliswa, and we worked, it was marvelous. It was, and we learned a lot, I have to say. And if I may say, one example is we saw a lot of dead bodies in this episode of the 69 in Sharpeville. And I noticed that when we had viewings with South African people, and I think it's perhaps for you the same, that that hurts a lot, of course, to see. And there was really, and I have to say it a bit careful, but there was really a difference between, we in the editing room as white people, we didn't think that through in that way. And such details, it's not a detail, but such elements, were marvelous to see, that we could discuss on that. For example, the role of the PAC instead of the ANC. All those things even if you study 20 years of South Africa, you don't understand it. So it was a total cooperation. So Xoliswa was viewing everything time and time again, gave her view, and we gave our input, and I've never had such a brilliant cooperation. Yeah.
And then before I open the floor for questions, there's the one thing also that I noticed was you saw how the Ntate, what's his name?
Grandson?
No, not the grandson, but one of the lady who survived Sharpeville, and the man who was among those who organized the strike.
Michael Chikizo,
Yeah, and I was looking at when you guys were capturing those stories, and they started crying, and this is something that happened many years ago, but obviously you can see that as we are filming, the wound is still fresh, right? They had to, I think the interviews took them back to that dark place where they had to relive the trauma. So my question here is then, as a researcher, normally we're trained that when you doing interviews with your participant, it's important to sort of maintain a distance, to be able to, maintain not subjectivity, but objectivity, right? And then you shouldn't be so close. So my question is, what was going on? Like, what is your take on that? How did you handle, that part when people start crying and breaking down in front of the camera, right? And were there any referrals? But if any, even if you were to refer to if you were to refer them to a therapist or a counselor, no amount of counseling will sort of help them because for as long as there's no justice, right?
Yeah.
But I just want to get your input, or what did you think? What was going on?
Well, first of all, I did the filming in Sharpeville, and together with Xolidi, she was there also, and Tsawana from Sharpeville itself. And the first thing is those were marvelous people, so warm and open, and I think the openness of them has set us on the path also to open up, because in the next episodes there are a lot of cases, a lot of stuff to open up also in those cases. And Michael Tsikizo is I mean, he's grand. He knows Sharpeville, he knows everybody, and he's not afraid. I think that's the main point. Back then, as a young man, he was not afraid to oppose the white oppressors, and now he's not afraid to show his emotions. So I was interviewing him, and I don't know. It happened, yeah, and yeah, it was a blessed moment, I think. Yeah, okay. Yeah, and for us, and for me also, to be in Sharpeville and I always go to where it happens, you know, if it's a front line or in Afghanistan or whatever, and now to be in Sharpeville, that name which is so important in my youth as well, that was something very, very special. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Thomas. I will now open the floor for questions. Are there any questions?
You can also ask in German.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you have questions, could you please go to the microphone that we can hear it in the recording? Okay.
I can. There are no questions.
Okay.
Somebody dares. Yeah.
Please introduce yourself, your name, and your institutional affiliation.
Yeah, so my name is Tilman Lüders. I'm also a member of the University of Bayreuth, but not in the Cluster of Excellence of Africa Sciences, Natural Sciences. But I lived in South Africa as a child for 5 years, so I lived there during the late 70s. So I experienced also my own part of the apartheid side. So, but my question, so first of all, before I pose my question, I would like to express my deep gratitude and appreciation for the work that you did on this series, and also for your very elegant elaboration on the background and your personal perspective. Thanks a lot. So the question that came to my mind, so we've been hearing a lot about the TRC inquiries, and also the Nuremberg processes have been mentioned a number of times. And one big difference was, so maybe also what made the Nuremberg processes so successful, or maybe more profound in their impact, is that teams of international lawyers and prosecutors came in, which was clearly the case after the Second World War, so it was natural. But maybe this could have been something that also the TRC could have considered, clearly not from Europe or the US, but bringing people in from the African Union or from international courts or whatever, to support this and also to bring in an outside perspective. Do you have an idea of why this was not done or not considered?
Because it was a compromise. Because ANC had to compromise with the National Party. And so many, it's broadcasted already in Holland and in South Africa, so I can say it. There was a political deal, and political agreement because the National Party and the white perpetrators had so much dirt on ANC, and we will show that in the series. For example, the ANC camps outside South Africa where people were trained. There were also tortures. There were ANC spies. So there was a lot of dirt on ANC members. So they said, those people said to the ANC, okay, if you come after us, we come after you. Then all this dirt will come out. So that was one of the reasons, and Yasmin Soka is telling that later on in the series, that's one of the reasons such compromise, and it was, and I have to say, Nelson Mandela was probably very wise in his to say, okay, let's not go that route, or because there was still so much violence, also black on black violence, that the country, the main task was to calm the country down. But like I said earlier, Yasmin Soka and others, they wanted the Nuremberg trial, because what happened now with the TRC, and we in the West perhaps think, the TRC is brilliant, but it is a huge thing to ask from victims and families of victims. Okay, listen to the story, you get the truth, and you have to say, okay, thank you for the truth, and there will be no prosecutions. That's really a big thing to ask, I think, to be honest, and especially in those 300 cases where the TRC said, okay, those perpetrators have to be prosecuted, and it's not done, then you victimize the victims again. So, but to answer your question, there was a political deal, there was a deal behind it, yeah. And we will show that in episode 3, yeah. So that's why the impact of the series is quite big in South Africa, and hopefully the frame, and I look at all those beautiful students, the frame of the TRC will have some more depth in the West, because it's now like almost like a fairy tale, like the TRC. Oh, then we have closure, but that's not the case. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thanks a lot.
I can also say one thing about Soliswa, and because Mr. Verwoerd, the old Mr. Verwoerd, he is born like 900 meters from where I live in Amsterdam. He's an Amsterdam guy. And Afrikaans is, of course, a kind of Dutch language, so we understand Afrikaans. And you talk about nowadays South Africa. Because we are from the homeland, we could access some of the bad Afrikaner killers more easily than yeah. And that's, it's super sad, but that's why this kind of cooperation, that's why we could show all sides. And one thing also, especially in episode 2, we talk about vlakplaas, which is really the killing side, which horrible things. We showed it to a lot of young South African people who are disgruntled, because we were afraid, okay, are those stories too hard-hitting? But what we noticed is also with young South African people is that they really wanted this information. First of all, they wanted to know what really happened. What is vlakplaas? What happened? And so because we speak a little bit of Dutch and Afrikaans, we could get those interviews.
Yeah. Thank you. Are there any more questions? Remarks? Comments?
Hello. I just have a quick question about your filmmaking process, because I was wondering, because we only really personal case that you brought to film was the one about Ahmed. Of course, every case is personal, and I'm sure there are many, many, many unsolved deaths or suicides in the history of apartheid, and I was wondering how you went about choosing which cases to present really prominently, and if there were maybe families who were disappointed or maybe even angry at you for not showcasing their family members' individual fates.
Well, it's a whole process. Like Tilana, I know her now for a couple of years, because the betrayal of her from Tilana, the betrayal of her father. I heard that when we were filming for another documentary in South Africa, and immediately it struck me. I thought, okay, first of all, this is kind of miracle. Tilana, as a young woman of 19, she was already aware that this system was wrong, and she expressed it already. She got beaten up by her father, and she didn't participate in this racist attitude. So for me, I thought, okay, that is something so rare. I mean, if you are brought up in a certain environment, if you as a young child, if you develop such a morality, that is rare. So, and I wanted to understand the structure of the story. So I wrote back then a long read for the main Dutch newspaper, just to look if we could structure this story. and but she was never on television. So when when we thought, okay, let's try and make the series, then I reached out to Tilana and said, okay, do you want to tell the story and how you betrayed your father? And she was willing to do it. So to get to those real emotions, I think it's very important to connect to people, and that sometimes takes a long time. With Michael, it was shorter. But we have marvelous other, it's a 3-part series. So we have marvelous other, very, very strong cases. Yeah, very strong stories where things shift from perpetrator to victim to perpetrator again. But it takes years to connect, and that's why. And so we first saw the stories. Okay, those are interesting because they have strange twists, and they tell something about the system. And then, of course, we connect, and some of those people were willing to tell the stories. Nobody was angry. This first episode was shown before. I wasn't in Johannesburg because we didn't have time, but I really regret it because it was shown outside in the air at the prison where Mandela was imprisoned, and also Gandhi. And I heard it was a really, really emotional story, and also other families were there. So there is a kind of connection between the families who are looking for truth and closure. So so there is not like, I want to be upfront or what. They now have I think 45 families have now. They want to bring President Ramaphosa in court to force an investigation into the delay of the prosecutions. Yeah, so they are working together. One of the families is who didn't have closure in that sense is also Steve Biko. I mean, it's still, I think, behind his name, the official cause of death is like tripping something or falling, or it's an apartheid, but it's not opened up, that case still. And so are many cases, but hopefully it will now. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more questions? Okay.
Hi. First of all, thank you for your movie, and thank you for your reflections and thoughts. I don't have a question, just a little comment. And already I want to say thank you for giving us such an important insight into like a white supremacist system like apartheid was, because it strikes me every time again to realize how many people here in the Global North, or however you want to call it, don't have any clue about what was going on back then, even what is going on today. So thank you for showing such a specific case of injustice and violence, so that hopefully one day there's like a collective remembrance of what happened and an acknowledgement what was going on. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Jaihui, did you want to say something? Oh, okay.
I found it, for me, the grandson of Verwoerd, of Willem Verwoerd, he goes around in the 3 episodes. His life is, he was a grandson of Verwoerd. He went to London, was a student, his eyes opened, came back, he became member of the ANC, he even worked at the TRC. So he made this turn also. But I find it so important to put in the quotes about the Dutch Reformed Church and about, with the Bible in the hand, having took 97% of the land, because, and that I think is your reflection as well, how, if there was a period that 97% of the best land, of course, was in white hands, it's not a surprise that it's such an unequal country. So when I hear Musk and when I hear also in Holland, there's a kind of proudness now on the Boers, but I think South Africans are marvelous people, because they had such a rough time, but there is such a rough time ahead to get a little bit equal. So when I hear all those stories about the white farmers, I think there's a bit nuance, and there is violence against the white farmers, but it will take as best, it will take such a long time to how do you say, polish away that horrible system, and also the inequality which the system brought out.
Yeah. Just to add to, you didn't introduce yourself, I think.
Oh, me?
Yeah.
I'm Rachel, and I'm a student.
Sorry, what's your name?
I'm Rachel.
Rachel.
Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to add to what Rachel was saying, because as I was sitting here, I'm a mother, so I agree with her that this is amazing, that first and foremost, like you're saying, that being a white person from the Netherlands, it's amazing how you're able to get access to all this information that if me or Ramaphosa would go to those spaces, wouldn't be able to have access. So I think I'm just reminded that it would be nice as well for my kids also to know what happened in their country, right? And I was just thinking, like, this is amazing. This film should be shown in schools. At the universities, they should be examined on such material, because, like you're saying, sometimes I remember when I was doing my honors in South Africa, and for the first time, and this speaks to how, our education system is very Eurocentric in South Africa, and for the longest of time, we didn't know anything. Like when we were taught in sociology, for instance, we always got introduced to 5 white men from 5 white countries, right? Emil Durkheim, Karl Marx, Max Weber, right? But nobody, I remember when I was doing honors level, that's like 4 years of university. I have not heard anything about any of the South African sociologists, right? Just because there was no term or concept sociology, it doesn't mean that there were no sociologists at the time in South Africa, right? So it's only in honors that I was introduced to people like Achima Feje, all these amazing, brilliant South African scholars who actually speak on social issues, right? So I think this work is important because then kids can be introduced to it earlier on, and they get to be critical and appreciate and see, and not to forget what has happened in their country, and perhaps also help us understand why things are as they are, because a lot of what's happening in South Africa now, it's very much shaped by the system, apartheid system, which even though, like I've said in my reflections, that even though the physical administration of it has ended, but it continues to haunt us. It's there constantly. I mean, the land issue, it's still a huge thing. Yeah. And I was very appreciative when Willem Vervoerd mentioned that admitting that they actually took 87% of the land. And then we were left with nothing. Like majority of black South Africans were pushed to the margins of, South Africa, where the soil is not fertile for them to plant anything really, So I agree with Rachel. It's amazing what you've done.
Yeah. No, we because we thought we have one chance with ARTE, with VPRO, ZDF, and especially with SABC, and. To retell the apartheid story, and at the same time look at what is not solved or look what really happened. So you will see in part 2 and 3 we have also tough interviews with ministers back then who admit, that so we felt we have one chance to retell it in a decent way. And hopefully it will resonate, but but it will be shown in a lot of countries at least. So yeah.
Okay, Any more questions? Or should I just, oh, okay.
Hi, I'm from Namibia, so next to South Africa, and just to say thank you again. I think it should have been shown at school. It wasn't. I'm curious to know what your thoughts are on the most recent South African election, because it's been the first election where people born after apartheid could vote, and things have changed quite a bit politically in the country. So I'd be curious to know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, well, I think it's logic that the ANC doesn't have a total majority now. Yeah. And one of the reasons is that they didn't fulfill a lot of promises, and of course corruption. We made the Hunt for Gaddafi's Billions, and we showed that Gaddafi was sponsoring certain former presidents of South Africa. So there was quite a corruption going on, and the DA, of course, has done. I'm apolitical. I mean, even in the Netherlands, I never tell who I vote or whatever. So, but in Cape Town, there is this feeling like, okay, they are not doing a bad job or something. So yeah, if it feels logical. If you promise a lot and you don't deliver, then yeah.
Well, my 2 cents on that is that I think, of course, people feel like it's been 20 years post-apartheid, or is it over 20 years, or over 46?
35 years.
35,
yeah,
thank you very much. And of course, people now feel like, okay, fine, surely there should be changes by now. There should be, service deliveries, all the struggle, the challenges that, in relation to service deliveries now, things should be better, right? But I also feel like in the process of us wanting that, and again, I said this way, I think we need to remember that the ANC, the African National Congress, also inherited so much of burden from the apartheid, right? So much. So I think 35 years, it's not enough to actually, for them to repair all sorts of things, like all, because I believe that they sort of made sure when they gave up power, they destabilized the country in such a way that it will take years and years, for us to recover. And what's happening to some extent is sort of to prove that black people are incapable of actually ruling themselves. And this is not to say ANC political party or members are perfect. I acknowledge that there's corruption, but even in the national parties, there were corruptions. They've done so much looting. And I feel like sometimes we sort of often, overlook that, and I've also had a lot of people, I've had these conversations when I was teaching at the University of South Africa, where a friend would be like, well, I'm tired of ANC, during apartheid, where black people are actually nostalgic about apartheid, that the National Party built them houses, but those were like matchboxes in those lines. Yeah, my grandmother had one. I grew up in those houses, and people would be happy, right? And then, so people felt like, well, they did something, and what is ANC doing, right? So I think for me, it's perhaps also, if such work is accessible to students now, younger people, then they would question whether, and again, power in South Africa still lies with white people, whether we like it to admit or not. So, yeah.
Yeah, also what struck me, and I don't know if you agree with me, but with the younger generation in South Africa, the anger towards Nelson Mandela and against Tutu, and what I hear constantly, okay, they have given us political freedom, but they didn't give us economical freedom, and I think that if that's not changing, then that the anger stays, of course. Yeah.
No, I agree completely. I think the wound is too deep.
Yeah.
But thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Any more questions? Oh, they're leaving. I thought they were coming. Okay. Okay.
Just one very short question. It concerns the part 2 and 3 that you've mentioned. Of course, people here in the room are very curious where and when we will have the chance to see those 2 other parts. Can you say anything on that?
Yeah, I think it's aired on ARTE on the
20th of May.
20th of May. Yeah, and then, but every week one episode?
No, I think in the evening the whole 3.
Really?
Yeah, I think.
Okay.
I have to look, but
So if we miss, okay, let's wait for.
Yeah, yeah. That's a hard watch to do the 3 series back to back. Yeah. So it was aired first in the Netherlands and then at SABC 1. Now ARTE, and then it goes to I don't know, Scandinavia and other countries. Yeah. And ARTE is
all of them on the 20th of May.
really okay. I didn't know. It was also the first time I've seen a dubbing version, so it was special. Yeah. Yeah,
Thank
thanks.
you.
Okay. Any more questions?
Yeah, I may have a question in that regard. First of all, thank you so much. My name is Nihan. I'm a doctoral candidate of intersectionality studies. Personally, come from Turkey, but we are, with whatever is happening in the world, whatever we are observing, we are thinking more and more how it has been in the past. And South Africa has always been an inspiration for us, and it was so interesting to learn more and more about. One of my questions were going to be like, how did you manage to get the corporations, the content? But it was already very well answered in the discussion. But I was wondering if you are only considering the European landscape to be promoting the documentary series, or do you have an interest or ideas to let it reach
to other countries? Yeah, well, it's a bit boring answer, but that's a sales agent who is doing that, and I'm always surprised. You know, if you make something, then sometimes I'm in a country and then I put it on the television and then I don't know exactly, but my guess is that it will reach Turkey and America and other countries as well. The Gaddafi documentary went to 40 countries or something. So I fingers crossed, I hope really that this series will have that reach as well. Yeah, but.
And my question is going to be lack of knowledge. How do we find ARTE, like the product? Is it on national TV? Is it online?
ARTE is national television here, right? I don't know.
I think Doris can answer the
So non-German context. Excuse.
No, it's just I know in France it's Channel 4, but I don't know in Germany and I think perhaps it goes to ZDF Info. I don't know, but
I haven't watched
TV. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
And I to answer your question about the people who also in Holland, for example, we are working now on a documentary about the former prime minister, and there was one editor-in-chief who said back then, many years ago, just wait 20, 30 years, and then, you know, sometimes it's time for people to talk, and that was at this moment. Mm-hmm. So we even got the politicians, and yeah, it's amazing. So we feel really blessed that we could show all sides. So please look at 2 and 3 as well, because it's really rare that, and also Soliswa played a very big role in that, especially on the ANC side. Marvelous people who were willing to talk to us. Yeah.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions? Okay. Should we wrap up?
Yeah, but I want to say one thing.
Okay.
Okay. South Africa is such a beautiful, beautiful country with such beautiful, beautiful people. I mean, if you have the chance to go to Africa, but especially South Africa, I mean, there's so much we lost in our society here in Western Europe. And you know, if you come at the airport and I hear that full laughter from somebody somewhere, I'm always happy to be in South Africa. Hopefully a little bit less crime, that would be nice, but yeah. But it's such a magical country. So yeah, I just wanted to say that.
Thank you so much, Thomas. This was amazing. Thank you so much for coming. Can we give him a hand of applause? I'll hand over.
Thank both of you for being here, and a big applause for Pinky and Thomas as well. Thanks so much. Amazing. So that was the official closure. Everybody can now sneak out and have a beer at the bar. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.